SMED, how rapid change orders create flexibility and flow. When I talk about SMED, I'm talking about single minute exchange of die. Or I learned this on the lean trip with Paul Akers to Japan, SMET, single minute exchange of task. Now let me talk all about it, and I want to talk about or show you what I've seen and now how I'm applying it to my work, which is absolutely phenomenal. You're going to love this video. So, single minute exchange of die, basically what happened in the United States, oh, by the way, much kudos to Henry Ford, who the Japanese learned from. Did you know in World War II, Henry Ford was creating a Liberty ship every 60 minutes, every hour. That's crazy. A ship an hour? Absolutely crazy with his line manufacturing concepts, okay? Now, the problem with that, which wasn't really a problem in the United States before, but it is now, is that you could mass produce Model Ts or Liberty ships and there would immediately be a need. So you could mass produce. This is called mass productions, economies of scale. In Japan, they had limited space, limited factory size, and actually less demand and higher variation. So if somebody would order, like, I'm just going to throw it out there, 10,000 Ford F-150s, you can just mass produce those. In Japan, if you get like an order for 750 Camrys, you get an order for, I'm just making it up, 400 a different type of vehicle. You might not have plants for just one type of vehicle. You might actually have to change out dies or actually machinery in some cases to change the line, because there's two reasons. Just in time with Toyota came about because, and I was taught all this, so I'm not wise in any way, shape, or form, but because they ran out of money to have inventory. But the other thing is they didn't have enough space. If you ordered 750 Camrys, how can we produce 900 of them with a little bit of a buffer, but then change the dies or whatever it might be? Let's say they were producing cars consistently, but the actual variation happened with the parts or the dash or, you know, whatever the case may be, or different trim. My point is, produce only what's needed when it's needed, right? And so they had to get really fast at single minute exchange of dies. And let me just go ahead and tell you the story. So we were in, I think I can tell you, it's called Mifune, but I'm not able to share the videos, but it was a real, or Mifune. It's a really neat company that produces parts for Toyota, then get circled into the Toyota production system. And there were 6 big machines that were massive, multi-thousand-pound stamps. They would stamp these parts together and they would go from one machine to another. And Paul actually timed it to where we could go there. So it's stamping these parts and then it filled the quota and they needed to do a single minute exchange of die. And so they had these rail lines, and I hope you can follow me on this, where once the machine stopped, they would take them out into its parts, take it out into its parts, take it out, and then they would move the cart and a little flap down, I'd say roller tray came down, and the old die came out, then that rail cart went down, then the new die came in and went fully up, then the empty cart went to the other one, took out the old die, moved forward, then the new die came in. This all happened 6 minutes. These are massive, massively heavy dies, and it all happened with very little movement, very little friction, without motorized parts or cranes. It all happened naturally. And it was so interesting. Paul was like, watch. And then the first operator had the first machine starting to stamp, and then they had it so in tune, then the next operator clicked in and the part came over, and the second machine, and Paul's sitting there narrating, and he's like, and 3 is online, and 4 is online, and 5, and at the end, the first part comes out, they pick it up and inspect it, and the whole line is ongoing in 6 minutes. Now, I used to think single minute exchange of die meant 1 minute. What it means is anything under 10. So single digit. So single minute works, but you could say single digit exchange of die or task. What it means is 1 to 9. It means the changeover happens in less than 10 minutes. And so that's single minute exchange of die, and I have videos on it, and I am so impressed. I was blown away at this. And so now they're producing a different part, so they're not overproducing the first. Like if it took an hour to change out the dies, they'd be like, let's overproduce the first. And what happens then? You have overproduction creates defects, and then you have overprocessing, and then you have transportation and motion, and then you have workers waiting on work, and the entire thing spirals out of control. And my way of doing it is you overproduce, which means you have excess inventory. Excess inventory gets transported and moved, which creates defects, which you have to fix, which is overprocessing, which creates waiting, which is not lean because you're not using the genius of the team. If those first dies were because the changeover takes so long, if they had overproduced, now you have to manage inventory, which is overproduction, and excess inventory, which leads to the other wastes. The point here is we have to get those changeovers faster. And the instructor said, it's not always a die that you're changing, it could be a task. I came back and thought, what are things that are hard for our company? Well, it's hard for us as a company to transition from a meeting to actual production work. Or it's hard for us sometimes to transition from a field walk to a pull plan. Or it's hard for us sometimes to transition from the middle of a pull plan to the schedule analysis. What are our change points? So we can start working those down to be SMET, single minute exchange of tasks. And in construction, you'll hear trade partners a lot say, I want the whole building. I want the whole floor. I want everything. That's because they don't have their single minute exchange of tasks down pat. Because if you have a crew and you're working in a zone and your fire sprinkler installer wants to, hey, I just want to do all of the main lines through the whole building and batch it, because they don't have a SMET, a single minute exchange of task process, then they're going to overproduce, take up too much of the building, and tank the overall schedule. But if it's like, let's install the mains, okay, now this is my mainline installation cart. Let me see if in under 2 minutes I can switch the cart or move the cart to now do branch lines and to get my cell set up. There'd be a lot less problems and we could move more zone to zone to zone to zone. Single minute exchange of tasks. So here's my challenge to you. Find out in construction where you have change points and where you have to change a task or a die or whatever, or your focus, and how can we get that context switching and all of the effort and the friction down to where we're into a single minute exchange of tasks. And we've seen massive benefits from this even with our remote consulting business, and in construction it applies everywhere. Oh, the other thing is Frederick Taylor broke all of our specialized crews out to where now it's harder to get everybody to work together. But we used to have it to where carpenters could do rough carpentry and then finish carpentry. All they would have to do is do a single minute exchange of tasks to change their bags and their belt and their tools to then go do a different task. We need to get more of that where we have cross-functional training and we have multi-skilled trade crews, but the key is we have SMET and we can quickly change in order for us to create flow. That's my challenge. Let's look for one area where you can implement that any place in your work. I hope you've enjoyed this video. On we go.